Do you struggle with curriculum decisions? Maybe you have your curriculum and you believe it's all Charlotte Mason friendly and it just doesn't go as planned. Or perhaps you're still stuck in that box curriculum and you're not really sure how to progress out of those done for you types of curriculum. And you'd like to kind of move forward, but you're really stuck with how to really do that. Or maybe you've created and designed your own curriculum and you're just feeling like your children are balking at everything you tell them to do. Well, if that's the case, you're in the right place. I'm Dollie Freeman. I'm the host of the Charlotte Mason Mastery Show. And today I have something special that will help you in this process of talking about curriculum. If you know someone that would benefit from this training today, I encourage you to tag them in the comments and encourage them to be your learning buddy for today's episode. Speaking of today's episode, allow me the opportunity to share with you what we're going to be talking about over the next 20 minutes or so. In today's live and interactive show where you get to share your comments and questions where I'll engage with you at the end of the show, we're going to be talking about how to solve the question of curriculum. This is something that's on so many Charlotte Mason mamas right now, and those that may be just thinking, perhaps this curriculum of method is the best for their family, but they're really not sure how to go about it. This is the topic that's going to help you understand the difference between an educational system and that of an educational method that I talked about last week. If you missed that show, you're going to want to make sure you do that one as well. So let's get started by talking about the very first thing about that question of curriculum and how to solve it. Charlotte Mason said that we are educated by our intimacies. Charlotte Mason is brilliant in the fact that she understands the process of the brain and what natural education looks like. And when I mean natural, I'm talking about what we are born with, the capabilities of learning. She believes that children were born with the same capacities to learn as an adult. And we are often in the system of education changing the way that children naturally learn and retain what they learned. And if we can stay with that natural way the brain retains, we will then be able to raise our children to self-education and prepare them for adulthood with the character and conduct you desire them to have. That first step is to understand that we are educated by our intimacies. So you might be thinking, what does that mean exactly? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I have a quote that has to come up because it's too much for me to retain in my mind, and you need to really understand this. So let's talk about this quote. Education is the science of relations, appears to me to solve the question of curriculum, as showing that the object of education is to put a child in living touch as much as may be of the life of nature and of thought. Add to this one or two keys to self-knowledge, and the educated youth goes forth with some idea of self-management, with some pursuits, and many vital interests. Now, this quote's going to come up several times throughout today's show because it is key to what we're teaching and learning about solving the question of curriculum. So I'm going to pull it up from time to time to help you do this, but we're talking about that very first aspect. We are educated by our intimacies. That's what Charlotte Mason calls the science of relations. So I want you to picture this with me of what that might look like in your daily life. This is where the duties of teachers look incredibly different than that of the homeschool that normally goes on, as well as the brick and mortar, because most of the time we're taking what education looks like in a brick and mortar school and bringing it into the home, instead of understanding that with a home education, it can look completely different, and it should, if your compass in your education is to raise self-educating children. The only way to do that is to have them educated by their intimacies. And this is where the science relations starts. That's where a child gets in touch, the living touch of what they're learning. That means, guess what, moms? As much as we love to learn besides our kids, we really need to get out of the picture as quickly as possible. Once we know that they've retained some things and are able to then go the right way. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and help you understand. But it all starts with the intimacies. We are educated by our intimacies. That happens through the science of relationship. That means parents and teachers are getting out of the way, and we're getting our children in living touch of what their education is to be. So what does that look like? Well, the second thing you want to do is educate children with things and books. Now, I know mostly in the Charlotte Mason world, we're hearing living books, living books, living books. And this is what we think about when we have our curriculum choices in front of us. But to solve the question of curriculum, Charlotte Mason tells us that our children learn, we learn, every person from baby all the way to adult, we learn by our intimacies. That is through the science of relations. And now Charlotte Mason is telling us those science of relations where we're having living touches in education need to come through things and books. It's not just living books or living resources like I teach the oral literature, but in things. So what does that look like? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, nature, like in this quote, let's bring that back up. As we look at this quote, I want to talk to you about what it really looks like. So nature is that training attention through observation. As you can see on the fourth line, that living touch in the life of nature. That is where you're training attention through observation. The second thing is thought. As you can see on the fifth line, she's telling us that through the living touch, a child needs to be thinking. That's where we see the eager attention. When a child has eager attention, guess what's going to happen? They're going to start having that intimacies, that science of relationship, so that they can begin to be educated. But it all starts with that eager attention. If your child does not have eager attention in whatever curriculum you put in front of them, rather it be things or books, they're not going to retain. So then that third part is self-knowledge. You'll see that on the fifth and sixth line, the self-knowledge, 2 keys. That self-knowledge is self-education. When a child has eager attention about something of the ideas that you put before them, they will dig for their own information. What they dig for, they will retain. In addition to that, that next part is when they are able to then have self-management. That's them going the right way. That's them so eager about what you're giving them with curriculum that they stay engaged with it. Then is the pursuit. That pursuit is their free time, how they're taking that self-management and going the right way into the pursuit of their free time. And then it ends up in that vital interest. That vital interests are dominant ideas. So as you can see, how this all works is that Charlotte Mason is showing us how that science of relationship is working, how it's building on every part of what she teaches. And it's a process. It's a step-by-step method. And that's the difference about what we talked about last week about the educational system and the educational method. It's a step-by-step process. It's a method. So this is what you're starting to see when we put the nature, where we're building that attention through the observation, then we're able to put books in front of our children. And that's that science of relationship through the intimacies. So when you see that, then all of a sudden you begin to see how that journey towards self-education is happening, and your children will begin to go the right way. And before you know it, their dominant ideas will be presented, where then you can help them in their further education into the prepared years of high school so that you can help them mark out their career. And it's so exciting when you just get to see how this all plays a part and how all of the 6 volumes of Charlotte Mason is simplified once we start putting all of the pictures together and realize how simple this method is. So let's talk about that third part of solving the question of curriculum. That third part is prepared with intellectual and practical interest. So at the end of that, when there's those vital ideas, the vital interests, those are the dominant ideas. And when we bring our children all the way through that, their education is provided for. Their character and conduct has been built based off the things and books that you put in front of them in their intimacy of their education, that science of relationship. And next thing you know, they're ready to then move into those prepared years with intellectual and practical ideas, marking out what they're to do in high school and then further out into their career and college as an adult. This is something that I have to tell you did not make any sense with me when I was first doing the Charlotte Mason, as I was, just gleaning as much as I could from those original pages. It took me experiencing and understanding, this is how that connects. Oh, and her philosophies are all through these 6 volumes, and it's kind of hard to piece them together until you have experience in that. And so when I have began to see, wait a second, my children are starting to self-educating. How did that happen? And then I went back to the books and I started looking and started seeing, this is what has happened. This is how this led to this one, and this led to that. And before you know it, they're prepared with intellectual and practical ideas that they will use in adulthood. And I love that because it takes away that whole stress every year when you're thinking about your curriculum. And what I shared in last week's show is that our children are not to be divided up into grades. This is why Charlotte Mason was not very much about grades, but was focused on the act of knowing. The act of knowing is her skill level, of her being able to know that a child is ready to move on because a child is showing the act of knowing of what their education gave them. And today we're learning that act of knowing only happens through our intimacies. Education is the intimacies. That's that science relationship through things and books. It starts with nature and our living resources. And remember, your resources can be DVDs. They can be face-to-face. They could be all types of things. That is the oral literature that's passed from mind to mind, not just written. In addition to that, we have spontaneous living or spontaneous learning that can happen just from life itself. So your curriculum is so much easier than you make it out to be. Now, let me just say that it takes practice. When sometimes you have to fail before you succeed. And those failings are not failures. They're learning experiences. When a curriculum doesn't really work for you, you know that, we tried that and it didn't work. And it didn't work because my children were not interested in it. They didn't have intimacies with what was put before them. So I want to share with you this resource. I'm going to show you how to get it in a second. This is a very full-packed resource of the Homeschool Planning Starter Kit. This is what I want you to be really contemplating on if you are in that place of trying to solve that curriculum. There are some foundational things that you need to put in place regardless of what method you might be using, regardless of how you're homeschooling your children. There are those fundamental planning steps you need to take, and that's what this covers. So I want you to see this is full out. There's no fill in the blank. It's all there for you. There are pages for you to actually process this education so that you can make that your own. So let me put this up on the screen so that you can go and get it. It's Discover the Art of Designing Your Own Curriculum. This is where it'll help you process through that box curriculum into your own curriculum and those mind changes that you have to take. So you can download it at charlottemasonmastery.com/kit. When you are able to see that and get it downloaded, you'll realize how valuable this resource is to just get you that foundation of understanding what it takes to plan a homeschooling curriculum that's designed for your family. That intimacy is so important, and it will help you move one step closer to a method as you are trying to take the lens of an educational system off and trying to put on that of a Charlotte Mason. It starts with those first beginning foundational decisions that you need to make. And I walk you through how to do that. All right, so if you have any questions, start posting them in. the comments, and I'll get into them in just a second. But I want you to know that the next episode, I'm going to be talking about the 4 soul ends to education. If you ever wonder, why am I educating my children? Why am I putting so much effort? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Or if you look back and say, they don't even remember what I did in 2nd grade. They don't remember what I did in 3rd grade, like I have. When my children have said, oh, I don't remember that book. And I was like, what? You didn't remember it? There are a few things, 4 to be particular, that helped me move past the fact that not everything is retained. And there is a purpose in what we're giving to our children. And you'll understand that next week when I talk about the 4 soul ends to education and how important it is to keep focus on those, not necessarily each grade, but how each grade pulls your children towards what they're preparing for in adulthood. I'm really excited about that episode. So let's get into the questions in the comment and see what you guys have on today's episode. Hello, Sarita. How are you? I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited about today. We have a storm brewing in, and I was a little concerned about today's weather because it looks pretty nasty out. So I was like, hopefully our internet's good. Let me go ahead and move that. So what questions do you have? Does it help you when you think about the intimacies, the science of relationship, getting your children things and books to be thinking about? And when we say books, remember, we're talking about living resources, not just living books. There are so many resources out there that our children have learned and retained so much better than just in living, because it's mind to mind. It's passing knowledge from mind to mind. And that's that oral literature that Charlotte Mason talks about. And so we have it really at our fingertips. You just have to look for it. Hello, Brandy. Nice to have you here. I hope you guys are getting that resource. Let me post the resource in the comments, because this resource is really something that's only for viewers, and I'm not sharing this anywhere else but here. So don't think you can go to the website and get it. It's not visible. So this is the place to get it, and it's just for you faithful viewers. So it helps to be here. So there you got it. There's the link if you haven't gotten it yet. Now, what questions might you have? I'm going to stay for a little bit longer. Facebook is telling me that there was an error in posting it. Sarita or Brandy, can you let me know if that link showed up? And if not, would one of you type in charlottemasonmastery.com/kit for me? That way, those watching from Facebook can just click on that link and go get it. Since it's not on my website and it's only for viewers, that would be helpful. Okay, so you guys are really quiet today. There must not be any questions related to how to solve the question of curriculum. Just always tell yourself intimacy. How is my children, how am I providing the opportunity for our children to become intimate with the curriculum that we provided through things and books? Once you do that, you're really providing your children with an amazing opportunity to have that science of relationship and truly getting them into that knowledge that's necessary for self-education to process. All right, so I'm not seeing any additional comments or questions, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know I'll see you next Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, same place, Facebook and YouTube, where we're going to be talking about the 4 soul ends to education, and it will give you the purpose that you desire to get your children there. So thank you for tuning in.